Hey, welcome to A Big Story Rewind. The podcast has undergone a few iterations since 2019. I've sought this mythical, pure conversation with inspiring creators over the years. And each season, I feel I get just that bit closer to having that give and take conversation that I forget I'm actually recording and I fool myself that we're having a real talk between friends. Well, the show is different now. There's still so many amazing episodes in the archives that I want to share with you. So be prepared for 2 more hosts. There's a lot more talk focused on images appearing on the screen while we were recording, but that stuff really doesn't affect the heart of the story and our guests' unique tales. I hope you enjoy this Big Story Rewind. Thanks for listening.
Each other.
All right.
Yeah, I don't draw it. No, can't do it. Can't do it anymore.
That's fair.
Yeah, well, I can't ask questions and think at the same time and draw. It doesn't work. All right. Welcome to the Big Story Podcast.
Hey.
Morrissey.
I'm Gary Dufner.
There's no Phil today. So
No Phil.
today our wonderful guest is Rebecca Mock. Rebecca, was it Mickety Mock?
Yeah, that's exactly how you say it.
Right.
Rebecca, Mickey, whatever you want.
Yay, Rebecca's here.
I love that when you said when you first sent an email, I was like, oh, that's so cool. She's kind of got like this cool nickname right in the middle of her email. So
I'm trying to make sure that, because my email address has the M in the middle and people get confused. It's for Mickey. It's for my nickname.
yeah. So I think it's brilliant. Well, welcome. I like your cup or your mug. Thank
you very much.
Very classy.
A Muse mug. Very classic. Old Muse. Classic Muse.
What's at the bottom of that mug? Inspiration.
What's inside?
Well, no,
Yeah, what's in the inspiration inside it?
You're looking for inspiration in that mug, aren't you?
That's right.
What's in there?
I'm drinking pretty lightly brewed black tea.
Ooh.
Because I already had a coffee, but I need something warm.
I had a nice black tea earlier this morning. That was my
black tea.
Yeah, it was
Got some PG tips. Classic.
Nice. I had berries. So
Ooh,
classic.
very nice.
Some Irish berries tea. Good stuff.
I had oatmeal. Bananas.
I had oatmeal too.
Oatmeal's the best.
Every morning.
Love an oatmeal.
11 ingredients every morning. Love it. So, well, now that we've gone through our food and beverage choices, Rebecca, how are you doing? Are you well?
I'm doing all right.
Nice.
Good.
I had a fun weekend and I'm still recovering.
Ooh, how fun was it?
It was pretty fun. There was a big movie event this weekend. They re-released Promare, which is this big anime film in New York. And so a bunch of people came to the city and we all went to the screenings and people get very enthusiastic at the show. And
that's great.
We exchanged postcards. It was like a mini anime convention, but just for this movie. And I miss anime conventions.
Where did you see the screening?
I saw it in Times Square.
Okay.
We went to see the 4DX screening, which I'd never done before. Have you done this?
No, what is that?
4DX is where the seats move. They rumble.
Oh,
it's fucking universal.
I am lukewarm on this future that we live in.
It's a ride, not just a movie.
No, I live in New York. I will make my own noise and I will rumble my own neighbor's seats. Thank you very much. I don't need a machine.
She'll spit on people.
That's right.
In the early 70s, Rebecca, Hollywood was trying to really come up with the idea because this is
They do this every 20 years or so.
This is this is pre-Star Wars. Hollywood hadn't discovered the blockbuster yet. So this was a very
the accidental blockbuster.
Yeah. So there was this movie called Earthquake, and Hollywood came up with this fantastic technique of this textural experience called Sense-Around. And what they did is they attached these boxes to all the rows in the theater, and they stuck these long rods that bolted to the bottom of the seats, and the boxes had a motor with an eccentric gear at the end, and they were all rigged to the same thing. So at the certain points in the movie, the person up in the box would push the button and the seats would go back and forth. And that was the immersive experience of 1973. So
I don't know. That's the thing, is that it doesn't
little massage.
It feels sort of like a bad massage or a bad roller coaster, like the rickety ones.
Right.
It's like, I don't want this while I'm trying to immerse myself in another world. Like, I'm literally trying to leave my body right now.
Yeah.
And I think we live in this world where we have these little boxes in our pocket which buzz and vibrate, and our watches vibrate. Like, all this stuff is already moving.
Is that my phone?
I like a soft vibration. I like a little pulse, that's fine.
Sure. They should maybe electricity. Like they zap us with electricity. That would be real.
Maybe. I've had that for PT, for physical therapy, where they put the nodes on you and they try to zap your nerves. That feels nice, actually.
A little gentle like muscle vibration. Yeah.
They just feel tingly after. It's nice.
So I don't think I know that movie. Are
you into like anime films or anything?
It's a pretty like
anime. Akira. Are you into Akira? Did you like the film?
Akira?
We were in college when Akira came out.
Yeah.
So that was like
good. It was really good.
Yeah. And and previous to that, like it's like, Gatchaman / Battle of the Planets, or
that's awesome.
That's like,
I watched the Titans and I watched Death Note. I like that.
Oh, Death Note, classic.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, well, Castle Cagliostro, whatever.
Castle of Cagliostro, the Lupin film. Oh, that one's so good.
That one's epic. And then like
the Ghibli films.
Yes, of course.
Or like those are sort of like the gold standard. And then
if I'm going to go to the movie theater and I want to see a cartoon film, I want to see a film like that. Like epic scale. Yeah. Just like super imaginative colors, just
Paprika.
Wild across. Oh my God, Paprika. Satoshi Kon. I've got some of his books. I've got a stack of all my faves.
Yeah, I think there's a whole sort of maybe like 20-ish plus years of that I don't like, the more recent stuff that I don't think I'm as familiar with.
Yeah, this is the more recent one. That's the thing, is that this is all of that stuff was big in its time. Promare is one of the big ones right now.
Cool.
And it's exciting because during lockdown, it was like people just sort of wanted, a reason to build a new community, reasons to, communicate and just sort of engage with each other. And that's what these little like events do. And it's been really nice. I just think fandom is like so revitalizing.
Well, it's, it's so amazing how that whole sense of fandom is, it's now legitimized in every aspect. Like,
it's so different, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, like you make $1 billion off of superheroes, every other year or twice a year, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So now it's like, so there's this financial sort of incentive has been sort of like, hey, this is legit, but it's okay now. Like, I have a niece who's, what is she, a senior in high school? Mm-hmm. And years ago, she was so into, fantasy stuff and all these things. And I was like, oh boy, like I remember being that. And I just remember the sort of the shame of the whole thing.
Stigma.
But not
fantasy
it's all A-okay. Like everyone does it. So it's great.
It took 30 years.
Yeah, right. It took a generation or two, but now we're here.
Yeah, no, I think
we're the reason, because we just kept pounding our fists and saying this stuff is cool, and now it is cool for the kids.
Yeah, and I think it's cool to be totally into something. Just like if you're just so that Gary and I were talking about that earlier. Yeah, I mean, like, it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, as long as it's not a bad thing, go for it, enjoy it, have fun.
Yeah, find your joy.
Yeah,
marbles, gardening, Legos, all of that stuff. Every time like someone shares that bit of themselves with me, I feel like I see them. Yeah. I see a bit of their soul, and I think it's
super special. I think it's beautiful. Special, and I think it's like I think it's a great thing to be able to access it, because I think it's very much what everyone as a child experiences. Like when you're a kid, you really get into whatever the thing is
at some level, and you're like, this is it. I love this. And
Yeah.
of course, it changes every 4 or 5 months for a child. But it's okay.
Every 4 or 5 hours for a child.
Yeah. But like that friend of yours who just loved dinosaurs. Well, now it's okay if you love dinosaurs, and no one's going to look at you like some maniac. It's like you're okay.
Oh, yeah.
You can be.
Every kid's got the thing that they're into.
Yeah. And so does every big kid if you let your little kid out every so often. So
it's true. And now we get to do it for our job, which is great.
Yeah, which is it's a privilege to say the least. And we don't
definitely.
Yeah.
So you I mean, I'll be honest, I was not aware of your work until talking with Hope. And
great.
Oh, yeah, she's fantastic. She's a power. She's amazing. And I was just like blown away when she shared the samples of the work you guys do together, and it's unbelievable, and it's a great example of what I feel is the class A exhibit of what comics are now in this country.
Oh.
Comics in this time are, you can do anything, and it doesn't have to be
It's true.
strict traditional American comic books, which there's nothing wrong with that either. Like it's so good that there's this wealth there, and it's the work you're doing is at such a high level that it can't even be dismissed of like, well, it's it's an indie comic, whatever, which is and that's so it's very cool to see this, and so digging into it, and I'm fascinated by that because the conformity of whatever the time was when I got into comic books and got into the industry of comic books. If I was like, no, man, my thing is Battle of the Planets, and I'm going to draw like Battle of the Planets, right? I never would have worked, I would have been starved out of the business immediately. So, I mean, because your style is so like, I should say your comic book style is so,
it doesn't have the same influences as like the big two, I think, is what you're saying.
No, I mean, there's such strong Japanese and European influences in the work.
Why don't you show some so we can see what it looks like?
But your illustration work is different in that respect. But like getting the comic book, the comic book work.
Yeah, this is children's books as well. I do some children's book cover illustrations.
Beautiful.
This is one of my faves. Nicola Berry's great children's series. I highly recommend it. It was a fun read for me.
Gary,
yeah, you can see that crossover with the anime look.
Of course, yeah. I'm very lucky that it's become popular because it is just the style that I drew in for fun for ages, and now I can kind of sell it. I can kind of market it to at least niche imprints, and sometimes the book calls for it. So I'm very lucky.
Yeah, well, I mean, but you're doing such a great job with it that it's not, like it's, once again, I always say it's like, if you do something great, it's undeniably great. Like you can't go like, well, like, you can't offer anybody the back door, of saying like, well, I mean, it's not really as good as, that kind of thing. Like if it's just so good, you can't argue that point.
Well, I appreciate the compliment. I try to be the best I can be. I think we all have to think of ourselves as, or think of our work as its personal best. Yeah. I've definitely struggled for a long time comparing myself to others and comparing myself to the greats for sure. Mm-hmm. And the comics that I idolized coming up. But for me, especially lately, I always just have to try to like push for my own personal, like most fun and most joyous, like most soul filled art. And definitely when that happens, I think that it comes through. I feel like a lot of the covers that have come out that I'm most proud of have this feeling. Like the two covers you showed, both of them I'm super proud of because they were this perfect mix of just like fun, poppy, and then like my past influences and bright colors and beautiful scenery and everything. Just like I love cacophonies.
Yeah.
I love noise, basically.
What a word.
And that comes out, I think, in my work.
Yeah, no, I totally say when we'll take a look at some other stuff a little later, and I totally agree with your sort of your assessment, your self-assessment in that sense. Now, was your earliest sort of visual influence, was it in anime or was it in a printed form? Like, how did you like what was your thing that drew you to draw?
Well,
yeah.
I'm glad you asked, because we were talking about this before, like what your first like kids fixation is.
Mm-hmm.
And one of mine was Archie comics. I don't know if either of you are big fans.
No, it's amazing how many people.
It's amazing.
That is the end. I mean, like a kid at 9 or 8 when they're first learning to read, earlier than that probably. Like I was learning to read from Archie comics and Sunday comic strips.
Mm-hmm.
I was not reading DC Marvel superhero comics. Those were not afforded to me. Those were too old.
Yeah.
There weren't a lot of comics for kids the way there are now. There was just Archie comics at the grocery store, the digests. And I would buy one of those every week. My mom would buy me one. And I would read it cover to cover like 9 times. And then I would go back to the grocery store with her the next week and get the next one. And even now, like I have a couple on my bookcase. That was the one thing I forgot to bring over. I was reading them the other day and I was laughing out loud. They are so funny. Like, that kind of slapstick comedy, I think, is what always was like the biggest influence for me. That kind, like a reading experience where it's just like punchline setup and delivery at the end, and it's like just someone like getting their face bashed with a mop. Like there's nothing better than that.
Yeah, physical comedy is the best comedy. A good person falling or walking into a wall. These are
so good. And the like old like silver golden age superhero comics have that same feel. Like they come from the same place.
Yeah.
So when I went further down the line, like into more superhero comics, I was always drawn to the older ones. But then from there, like middle school time, that's when manga started to get published like very extensively. And so bookstores had huge manga sections, and I would be piling those into my arms and carrying them to the cashier and buying, stacks of them. And from there, the rest is history. So Archie came first, and then, Ranma 1/2 and Tenchi Muyo is a big fave. Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball Z. Oh my God. The best. Those also have huge slapstick and like punchline joke, sort of like serious fight scenes, but also they work in tons of humor in a great way. And so there's like a very easy transition from kids comics to those kinds of works. I am drawing kids comics, so
right. Well, because you said there weren't a lot of kids comics when you were a kid, and I'm thinking like, well, there really weren't any kids comics. We had Archie. We had I don't know, just Richie Rich or something like that.
Yeah, Calvin and Hobbes.
Casper.
Calvin and Hobbes I was in high school.
We were in high school when that came out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
So it wasn't even a kid.
I was totally into that, but
yeah, same here. But like we were
awesome.
fully formed like sort of obsessives by that point. So
yeah. But how much are our influences defined on what's being published? Like what's big in publishing? Because I was very much influenced basically by what was being put out, what was available to me.
Yeah.
And so are you. And so are the kids now.
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, like, everyone, I think people go like, well, it's amazing. But everyone's all into this stuff. I'm like, well, that's because people are putting it out there. Like, if it wasn't out popular. There, no one's buying, Rock Around the Clock, on Apple Music. Like no one's doing that because that's not what's being put out.
Yeah. And then you do get indie comics, and you mentioned that as well. And that's where you find yourself if you keep digging into the comics world. You got to dig for the good stuff.
Digging.
That's where it is. It's in indie
that's what
publishing.
I did.
Yeah.
Alex knows that. When I was in college, I'm like, nope, I'm not over there with the Marvel and DC. I'm over here with the independent comics.
They've got some interesting things going on, but if you're good in that industry, it's because maybe you've come from indie comics. You get your second meal over here in the indie world.
And I think a lot of people who did groundbreaking work in the major sort of ranks of comics listen, there's always outliers, but they were looking at indie comics and saying, wow, like they really are getting away with so much, and so they were like, well, how can we get away with more, with Daredevil? So Frank Miller's like, I'm gonna like go crazy on Daredevil, and he did, because like no one cared about the comic, on the publishing side. They're like, that doesn't sell, who cares?
Yeah,
sure, go for it, Frank.
That's a blessing.
And he went towards what was being done in Europe, and story wise,
and in Japan at that time, like manga was some manga was coming over, and you can read manga from that time too, like Ghost in the Shell, Akira was getting published at that time, and they were talking to each other. These works of art were informing each other.
Oh, for sure. Well, I mean,
you can really tell.
Yeah, Masamune Shirow is like my apex as far as Japanese, creators go. That guy.
Yeah, and those comics are dense.
They're beyond
very different than now.
You can't even really comprehend it. You can reread and go like, well, I got a little bit more this time. Every single time it's just it's
like 5 pages at a time.
But that guy, like the fact what he can do on his own and how far he pushed to things. I mean, if you look at the dates of what he was doing when he did Ghost in the Shell, it was in the 80s. Mm-hmm. He was predicting networked computer systems and all these things that we look now going like, oh yeah, that seems like pretty legitimate kind of stuff happening now. And he was doing it 30 plus years ago. So that guy's insane. Just so cool. But So I mean, were you like as a kid? Were you like a scribbly kid, just drawing all the time, or were you just making stuff as
Scribbly for sure. Yeah. Definitely got in trouble with the teachers for drawing in class.
Yeah.
And not paying attention.
All of us.
That's my origin story. Basically, I was getting in trouble constantly for that until my teachers realized that I was good at math and that I was only good at math while I was drawing.
Okay.
And so then they backed off. And they were like, "Oh, okay. She's special then.
Let her do it her way."
Yeah.
She's special.
And at that time, I was into drawing, but I was into lots of other things too. I was into, acting, comedy, writing. I was good at math. I was getting pushed into these special math classes. And I wasn't really like serious about drawing until middle school. And I went to a magnet program for middle school, high school, which had an art program. And that was when I started taking art classes daily. And you had to have a daily sketchbook, and you had to have projects. You had to learn art history. And learn all of these basic painting and drawing techniques, how to use acrylic and watercolor, how to do gesture drawing, anatomy, who the famous like old masters were. All that stuff was like middle school. I was getting all of that soaked into my brain at the same time I was first reading all this manga and having all these feelings, because manga is so full of emotion. And I was getting socialized through art because I was meeting all of my friends through art class, and we were all talking about art every single day. And that sort of shaped like who I am now. I'm still that person. I want to talk to an artist about their work. I want to see the world through what I draw. Basically, I'm always thinking about that. And I was consuming all these stories, and I was thinking about how I could tell my life through a story in the same way.
Where did you grow up?
In Florida, in South Florida.
Oh, okay, all right. Gary's in Florida.
Oh,
I didn't grow up here, but I'm in Orlando.
He's retired.
Very nice.
I'm retired.
Yeah,
it's a nice place. Lovely weather. Only in the winter, though.
Yeah, right.
It's a little humid right now.
Maybe a bit.
Slightly.
A tad.
This exposure, like I'm a huge proponent of like a couple of things. Like one is exposure to something, and the other one is encouragement / support.
Yeah, constant praise. That's the other thing that definitely happened, was just art teachers every single day saying "good job" whenever you draw something.
Right.
And that sort of ingrains itself in your brain.
It does, and there's a. I think there's some sort of, I don't know how it happens, but there is a head start factor that kids do have, that some children can emulate the shape of something that's recognizable to other children at an earlier age.
And then you connect with that other kid.
Yeah. And so then all the other children go like, oh, you're the kid who can do this, and then that becomes something like, so you get this positive identification at a young age. You're like, okay, well, I guess that's my thing, like, all right, well, I guess I'm the kid who draws tanks or planes or, buffaloes or whatever the thing is that somebody draws.
Right. Imagine a whole class of those kids. Imagine the kid from that kid in every class went to the same middle school.
Right. Yeah.
And high school.
So it was you went to a special program school for those 7 years of school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that school, so I was doing well in art class, but the kid I became was the anime kid. I became the anime club president.
Nice.
Middle school, high school, college. That was that guy.
Wow.
Because that was my identifier. Basically, I was like, well, okay, yeah, I love art history. I'm very serious about my art classes, but also I really like DBZ, and I really want to talk to you about it.
All right, that's so cool. So, I think it's so cool. Like I've mentioned it before, but like I got beat up for wearing Vans in junior high school because like they were just so outside the norm of what people would accept where I grew up. So, they didn't
really come into fashion till the 90s, did they?
I don't know.
And even then, it was sort of
still a little
alternative.
Yeah, I don't know. I always flinch when I see people when I'm wearing them. So,
I had a special experience because of the art school program where I would have like probably had a tough time socializing because I was so engaged in. I just was obsessed with pictures and drawing and all of this stuff. Like I probably would have had a harder time, but I was very grateful to be in an environment where being an artsy kid, being kind of a weirdo was celebrated.
Yeah, and
that is something that I treasure and value so much because it gave me a lot of confidence at a time when a kid really needs like a lot of confidence boosts.
Oh, for sure. I mean, because if you have a group of peers and your peers are all into this one thing, that's where you can build your self-confidence. But if that's externalized, within a larger framework, then that's, that's what it's like being the cool kid. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's pretty, that's rad.
Like being the kid who like did the best in art class that day.
Right. Believe me, that was never, ever, ever a thing in 1980.
Yeah. It's nicer to see that it coming more into the mainstream now. And like that school I went to still exists. And I go back to visit sometimes and it's still the same. It's just kids who are so enthusiastic about art. And so because of that, so independent and so like well-spoken about their work and like very enthusiastic about art in this beautiful way.
Yeah.
To be that way so young is lovely.
That's great. I mean, it's envious. I would love to have had a similar experience as a kid because that just sounds like a great space to be in. So
it was a lot of fun.
Did you? You're anime president and you're reading manga at a mad pace and you're drawing and art history. You're immersed completely. But like, are you being counseled
in comics?
Well, I mean, in what you're as an artist, by the sort of the adults in the situation, or are you thinking in your head like, okay, what do I do with this?
Yes.
Okay.
Great question. Because I feel like, actually I have an example. So at this time I was trying to do comics and I was trying to present them to my teachers and be like, this is a thing I'm really passionate about. Mm-hmm. But the one downside to like the art program was that they were very against cartooning and comics. They really wanted us to focus on the fine arts. And so very quickly you develop a chip on your shoulder from that, where you have to legitimize the things that you're passionate about by saying this is related to art history because of this. And so I learned a lot about comics history.
Conceptualize on this piece.
I had to bring up Will Eisner every single day in class and like, look, he wrote a book.
He drew it.
Read Scott Pilgrim. Exactly. It's a beautiful art form, graphic novels.
It's a cartoon.
But because of that, I tried to like focus on anatomy. I tried to focus on how comics could be very realistic and like detailed. And I think I'm still trying to do that with my work, which is like always show off like, look, there's a background. I drew the background in so that I'm not lazy. Please don't give me a less than an A+ while I'm doing this comics thing that you don't want me to do.
Now you're saying, see that. Please pay me.
Yeah. I brought this in. This is the comic I did in high school.
Oh my gosh.
My mom sent it to me because I wanted to show my friends. I was really into Sonic the Hedgehog for a certain amount of time.
Okay.
I had a Sonic OC, of course, and I drew this comic, and it was on notebook paper in class, and it looks like this.
Ooh.
Okay. Yeah.
That's my first.
Looks familiar.
What I did with part of this comic was I turned Sonic and all of the other characters into humans because it was more serious. I was literally taking this fun thing I was doing just for fun, not for class, and I was trying to make it more serious and fine artsy by taking a cartoon character and trying to make them more complicated, which is the opposite of what you should do.
You were recontextualizing, don't you realize?
Yeah. Look, it's Amy and Sonic as high school kids.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, listen, but you could also identify with the high school kids because you were one.
Exactly. And so it's fine in that respect. And also I'm very proud of this comic book.
That's amazing. I don't think there's
I feel like I got pretty far with this. But
that's amazing. Nice.
This is a treasure. But like, that's the kind of thing I would do, is I would constantly have to justify this hobby of mine and try to work it into my identity that my teachers wanted me to pursue. Because I had quite a lot of skill with drawing and painting. And the way to get into art school is to get a big scholarship, because art school is unaffordable otherwise.
Right.
And to do that, you have to build up a whole childhood career of art success. And you have to, get a lot of awards and be in a lot of children's exhibitions and win silver keys and things. And I was only able to do that with fine artsy stuff and not the stuff I was really interested in, which was comics and cartooning.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean, what the value scale is of something, in the eyes of whomever's in charge, and which makes it, it makes
that's changed a lot too. That's definitely changed in our lifetime.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot. I mean, I think there's a huge, sort of shift in that sense. So you were sort of like, an endeavoring, artist in your K through 12 years, and pushing the envelope and really sort of like thinking about what you were doing, what you wanted to do. And did you get that scholarship? Did you go to art school, or did you say, nope, I'm going to go do something else?
Go renegade.
Yeah.
No, I got the scholarship. I went to MICA, which is in Baltimore.
Okay.
I was an illustration major. That was when I finally cut loose. I was like, I got the scholarship. I'm here. I'm going to study comics. I'm going to study cartooning.
Because they're ready for you to do comics.
No one can stop me.
Yeah, nobody can stop you, because now you're off into college, and it's you can do whatever you want, right?
Yeah. Finally, time. And all of my hard work will pay off now, because I got so much schooling already in all of this other magic school programs.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think that was really true, but it brought a lot of confidence to my entry into the college scene. And that's great. And so I did that's when I started, literally like the first month of college, I went to SPX, the Small Press Expo, in Bethesda, which is north of DC. I don't know, have either of you been big SPX attendees?
I have not. The closest I can get to is having attended the Baltimore convention.
That's a great show too. I went there as well. Love Baltimore Comic Con.
Yeah.
Lovely. It's like it's a big show, but it's not overwhelming the way that NYCC.
Yeah, exactly.
Is. Yeah. Those shows introduced me to indie comics, introduced me to independent artists doing their own thing, doing comics that defy genre and have global influences.
Yeah.
And, at the time, definitely, I was sort of at the tail end of it, but the indie comic look was like black and white brush and ink, or pen and ink.
Because it was Paul Pope.
Yeah, very Paul Pope. He came to school to visit us once, which is whatever. But the style that what was great about it is that it was so easy to Xerox copy and share your comics, and that was this exciting new way to identify as a comic book artist, not try to get a book deal or become someone in like a big industry, but just make your own story. Just go for it. Draw whatever story you want and make a Xerox copy zine and just hand it to someone, and you're a comic book artist.
Officially.
You can put that on your resume.
Did you have? I mean, did you have? Was there any sort of? I mean, did the school completely support your like, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to draw comics, or was there sort of a structural sort of? Because I know plenty of people who went to art schools with the idea of wanting to draw comic books, and then their instructors are like, either A, I have no idea about comic books, or B, no, we're here to learn how to, do X, Y, and Z, but not
exactly. Comics. I'd say there's a bit of both there. Definitely, like when I got there wasn't a comics like club. Okay. So me and another freshman founded the MICA Comics and Sequential Art Club. There was definitely some professional comic book artists on staff at MICA.
Oh, cool.
Were our advisors, completely supported us. We did tons of stuff outside of class. There wasn't a lot of comics classes at the time, and there are now, because comics has become more and more popular of a focus.
Well, I think the amazing thing about comic books now, outside of the breadth of it and in the sort of the public eye of comics as a medium, is that it's not just getting hired to be a monthly gun for Marvel or DC or Image. Now it's a world where you can get the two words you said earlier, which didn't exist before, were book deal. That wasn't there was no such thing as a book.
Yeah, that was going to happen next.
Yeah, so that's but now you can go to art school and you can hone your craft as a visualist and as a writer, if that's what you so intend to do. Mm-hmm. And you can exit the school with the intention of saying, hey, listen, I'm going to be a graphic novelist. I'm going to write, and I'm going to get a book deal, and I'm going to do this as a career, which, had we, Gary or I, said that to our parents, they'd been like, wait, you're going to do what? It took enough convincing to say, hey, listen, I can do this, and I can get hired by Marvel and DC, and there's these book, dozens and dozens of books are published every month from these companies. There's work. There wasn't so much of a path of like, well, I'm going to make my thing, and then the world's going to pay me to do my thing. Like that didn't exist in so much as it does now, which I think is beautiful. So
it's wonderful. It's still changing. It's going to look very different 10 years from now. Mm-hmm. The way that the idea of one of the big 5 children's publishers getting you a book deal for your graphic novel didn't really exist 10 years ago.
Right.
That sort of I feel like there was only a few people doing that, and only very small. And then things like Raina Telgemeier's huge success in children's publishing, lit a fire under every other publisher's butt. Saying we have to throw money at this. We have to, and so the kinks are still getting worked out with the system there, but it definitely changed. Yeah, you're right. How people think about the career.
Yeah.
But there's something else as well. I think that 10 years ago, I didn't perceive that I could do multiple things.
That's a really strong point. Right. Yeah.
I wanted to be a comic book artist, and I thought, well, I'll get a part-time job or something while I draw comics. Right. It didn't occur to me that I could be cross medium artist.
I know.
And that seems to be the only way to be a freelancer now.
I totally get that, because I think that's the exact same sort of conclusion I came to, at a time where I was like, when I wasn't doing, when I wasn't getting the gigs drawing comic books, I didn't realize I could also parlay this. I could go work for ad agencies. I could go get an agent who could say hey, we've got a spot illustration for this, that, or the other thing. While I did those things,
animation, there's tons of work for a comic book trained artist in that field.
That came late in the 90s. The opportunity for animation didn't happen until late in the 90s, and that was, and it did happen, and it was an interesting. I was living in Atlanta at the time, and a fellow comic book friend of mine was like, hey, if you're not busy, we need some people down here because I'm working here at this animation house. And it was 4 blocks down the street from my apartment. So I guess I can come on by, and it was great. It was a so you learn to tween, you learn to do all.
Yeah. It's a desk job where you draw.
Yeah.
Which is what we all would love.
Oh, for sure. It was social because
Yes.
you weren't alone in your stupid studio staring at a wall, you
I
know?
love office culture.
Yeah.
I say as a tourist.
Yeah, no, I mean, it has so many highs, you know, to go along with it. There's just a great thing, but it is interesting. And I think it's tough. And I mean, it might be partially due to like my character makeup where I might be a bit myopic in the sense of like, no, I'm just going to draw comic books, you know, and that like that rather than saying, no, I'm going to eat. So,
that's the question that never gets answered. Are you gonna be successful drawing, or are you just gonna like go for it and draw comics, or are you gonna, you know, support yourself?
Well, because listen, the only success stories that we hear are the ones of the people who, you know, like, you know, sacrificed everything and just wrote it out to the end, and then it took off, and you know, and now
which is a terrible narrative to tell people.
No,
you're only going to make it if you really, really try hard and like ruin your life.
Oh, for sure. And the fact that we like, listen, we typically don't look at somebody who's a fair to midland commercial artist and say, that's who I want to be like. We look at the people who are potentially geniuses who have been struck by lightning and can do
and
this.
Had tons of luck as well. Tons of luck and legs up.
Sure. Right. And the thing is that we look at them and go, well, that's the bar. That's who I must measure myself against. And you know, and there you are, just, you know,
or else
like
I'm a failure.
Right, you're tilting at windmills at that point. It's an insane, you know, gambit, but it's hilarious. But you know, there's a great adage of always try to capitalize on your throwaway years.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I love that. Yeah, I think that's great advice.
It's when I heard
measure yourself by your throwaway years.
Yeah, because you can. There's so much value. No. There's so much experience that you could draw from that to be able to, you know, recontextualize into something of value for the thing that you really truly want to do. Like if you have to work in an office for years, you know what, you might be able to write a novel or a graphic novel or make a cartoon strip which takes place in an office, which you have firsthand understanding of the madness that exists in that space.
Yeah, that's a wealth of storytelling experience. And also, like, utter boredom is the best inspiration. Sitting around doing like grunt work is when I always come up with my best ideas. Yeah,
and that's listen, utter boredom is a great name for a comic strip.
I'd read it.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
that's not advice. Like every experience and ideas and inspiration come from everywhere.
Everywhere. Like you can't, like, you know, it's that great question when you're talking to a writer, like, so where do you get your ideas? You know, like living?
Yeah.
Failing, you know, like, I don't know, like it's all just
caffeine mostly.
Yeah. I mean, it's a creativity is the ability to connect the invisible points that no one else is looking at, you know, and then you just you go, oh, okay, I've stuck these 6 Lego together and look what I made. And you go, wow, that's a pretty cool shape. We'll work with that.
Where do you want to go next with that?
So you're a newly minted artist, you know, you're graduating, they hand you a diploma, you know, you're like, you know, you're
I've got my little college graduation portfolio full of middling work.
You hand the keys to the comic book club people for them to take care of it. You hand the keys to anime club people, you take care of that, and off you go. So what happens?
Well, for a few months, I try to start up doing my own like little indie comic projects. I make a couple of zines. I show at Baltimore Comic Con with a friend. And I get a part-time job answering calls at a pizza delivery place. And you know, I'm living a fine life. Everything is going great. And then that fall, I get basically what happened to you. Your friend calls you and like, hey, we need you to come down. We need a grunt worker essentially for an animation project. And that's what I got. A friend of a friend. There was a freelancer opening at Rockstar Games at the New York office.
Oh, okay.
And they essentially needed someone who could drop their entire life and come to New York for 2 weeks and just sort of fill up spots and do background art for an animation. And I had no experience doing background art. I was just fairly good at perspective. I mean, you know, I can eat off that skill. I will brag about that. And I had the ability to say, "Hi, pizza place, I'm not coming into work next week," and I could crash on someone's couch. And so I just showed up, and that actually lasted 6 months because every 2 weeks they had like a new thing, and I was there. So they just kept giving me work. And what happened was that was the first time I used Photoshop entirely for projects. Like I was very like adamant about doing hand-drawn stuff before that part, which takes so long, so much labor. And also I hadn't really considered art that had no people in it like ever before.
Right.
No?
Yeah. No, that's the point.
And it was like my mind was blown. And and so in that 6-month period, I built an entirely new skill set. I had a whole new portfolio of work, although I couldn't share any of it because it was in-house.
Sure.
And I was also in New York, and I had this money I had made from the job, and I could get an apartment there, and I could sort of start over. And from there, you know, basically everything else started from there. I went back to doing zines essentially once I started having time again, and so that led me to Hope. And doing comics, but then I also had this like skill of doing background art and illustration and animation as well, and that led me to a lot of freelance, and I was able to support myself doing a bunch of different art stuff.
That's so cool. So when I looked at your website, like you have like these great pieces that are on your site, which are these illustrative pieces, and little animated pieces.
Yes.
And so I'm going to put a couple up on the screen, and why don't you just talk about them because they're really freaking cool.
Ah, yes. This is the Aftershocks piece.
Okay, so what did you do this in?
I did this in Photoshop, all Photoshop. This one. This was a headache and a half.
Yeah, I would think.
Because the animation itself is very simple. This is a 12-frame animation, and I use the frame by frame dialogue box in Photoshop, and I basically just sort of think of my animations like stop motion or even like puppet building or little machine building. And so you build all the pieces, and then you basically frame by frame move them or nudge them or rotate them however you need. And for this one, the key was getting one piece to work. So I think the first thing that was animated was the bookcase that's on the left.
Right.
The way it sort of like sways. Once I got that timing, everything else is built around that. And so I just went through each piece and I said, okay, so all the little books on the bookcase move like 2 frames after, and they move in the same pace. And the chair behind it, the lamp, all of the frames, like everything just matched up to that. And it was just basically knocking down dominoes. But the context is this is supposed to be the tremors of an earthquake right before the big earthquake hits. Okay. That was what the article was about. And the art director came to me with this idea, and he was like, I just need you to figure out a nice way to do this.
Now, did they, I mean, I'm blown away by the palette. Did they deliver a palette, or is this something you had to develop?
Oh no, this was like the 12th hour, using adjustment layers on top of a very purple, like a lot of shades of purple was in the original piece. I think I actually have like some process bits from this piece somewhere that I could show.
Yeah, I love that.
Adjustment layers always save the day.
Yeah, yes, they do. They do.
Woo. And this is for Crunchyroll. I got to work with Crunchyroll on some anime related stuff. This is the best. I actually wrote a piece for them. I wrote the essay that became a video essay they did on the anime Slam Dunk, which is based on the manga Slam Dunk, which is getting a remake movie, I think.
Really?
Or a remake anime? Yeah, it's coming back, my boys.
Like from from the 90s, right?
And this is a classic case of the artist Takahiko Inoue, I believe, basically really wanted to do a manga about basketball because he loved basketball in high school, and he was already an assistant for another manga artist, so he had some skill. But he basically sort of, against his editor's suggestions, he kept drawing this comic book, and he kept submitting chapters, and he tried to make it as little about basketball as possible at first. And that's why when you read the first volume of Slam Dunk, it's like so much about the guy's like dating troubles. But then by volume 5, of course, this whole story is just about basketball. I love it. I love just artists who go hard on their bullshit, like through the brick wall.
Totally.
So
well, it's great.
But this animation is, it's just, I really love the moments in anime that are, because I'm a background artist trained now, I love those bits of animation and those sort of shots in film that are like an object or a moment in time that seems to like last forever, and that atmosphere. And I thought that like the perfect thing to do for this would be that basketball like toilet bowl thing that always happens, where it just sort of circles the rim and you think it's not going to go in.
Yep.
Well, that one's not going to go in.
No.
I mean, is it?
Oh, it's the end of Inception all over again. This is our version of Inception. It's beautiful, and I love. I mean, it's interesting. I love how you're doing. You handle like the the sort of the lens flaring, but like in a very sort of soft brush approach.
Yes, that's just an airbrush in Photoshop. Just
I love it.
I pulled the colors straight from Slam Dunk Anime, like just tried to match the style of some of the shots in the actual anime.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's great. And then there's this is it Airbnb?
Yes, this was the cover of their Airbnb magazine at the beginning of last year.
It's great.
I love this piece. And also, I had taken a long break from illustration before getting this assignment. And so this was like my first big
dive back in
painting in a really long time. And I had gotten an RSI, like pretty bad, from overwork, from trying to burn the candle at both ends, essentially. And so it was, I was sore every day after working on this because I was still rebuilding muscles. And I was trying really hard to like refine like what I was interested in. That thing like your off years, you try to like reassess what do I really like about illustration, and this was it. This was me saying, this is what I love to do, just messes.
It's great. Yeah, well, you were talking the cacophony, here
it is.
The control of chaos, and it's
Did you
there.
use photo reference for the lighting and for the room?
Not for the lighting, I made it up mostly. But for a lot of the details, I love this. The assignment was to paint a messy artist studio. They were like, and I gave them a sketch of a printmaker studio, and I was very inspired by my friend Kathy G. Johnson, also a comic book artist. But they also do printmaking, screen printing a lot, and they work in this studio that they rent out to do their screen printing. And they've shown me pictures of like their process before. And so I was like, please send me all the photos you have, and I will literally put little details of your process into this piece. And so
it's great.
It's like the literal water bottle, the talkies, the screen prints, the bags.
I'm looking at the layers of in the drying rack of the turtles.
The drying rack.
The turtle,
I see the actual turtle on the table, and the turtle
pieces on the wall.
That's the idea, is that you move around the space and you see a different process of inspiration to process to final piece.
It's beautiful. It's fantastic. I love it. And then I thought this one was great. This is
the Riso printing.
Yeah. I love it.
This was for a series, Mocha Arts Festival.
Okay.
Which is supposed to happen in May in New York every year. I did the badge art for them for 1 year, and so I did 5 different illustrations, and this is one of them. And so each like type of badge had a different one of these little spot illustrations on it. And so each of them were different little like parts of the indie comic book artist or indie illustrators like little prep for a show like Mocha. And so here's the Riso printer getting their prints right, checking the colors, reloading the drums. And there was one where like the zine collector is taking a photo of their haul.
That's really cool.
It's like the artist with their cart and all of their zines and stuff trying to and setting up their table. And so these were lots of little like personal details.
I appreciate the 80s color motif as well.
Yeah, for sure. So much fun.
Yes.
And this is great. The subtle animation in this is really nice.
Yeah, this one was so much fun. This was for Steam, the video game downloading website.
Mm-hmm.
And so Steam is owned by Valve or part of Valve. And so I got to work with Valve's like art team. And they are consummate professionals, super talented, great designers. And so every step of this process was just like butter, like went so smoothly that they wanted me to just do my thing. Essentially, they was like, make a mess, to illustrate a garage full of junk. And then slowly have it cleaned up. So there are 4 different versions of this illustration where it gets like cleaner and cleaner, and then like put little animated bits in there.
Yeah,
So I just had to have fun.
I love the combination with the purple and the terracotta of the roof.
Yeah.
I love that. I love it. Love it.
I can't help but use purple. It's obviously like if you look at all of my work, I love purple.
I'm similarly addicted to that color.
I think all artists are.
Oh, and this one was for Lethal Lit, which is a podcast.
Oh yeah, sure, I've heard of it. Yeah,
a narrative podcast. Another comics guy founded it, Adam Staffaroni, along with some other people. But he was the one who actually gave me one of my first like comics gigs when he worked for Boom. And so when this came around, he contacted me because we had already worked together. And it was great to work with him again. And it was basically very simple process for this one because it was essentially do a lot of different pieces, like building a little machine. And then I used After Effects to animate it. So it made it really
The lightning is coming out of the crow's mouth.
Yeah. I love that crow. I love how evil he is. It's very, very Poe, very like a lot of horror literature references in the actual podcast. So we wanted to bring that in.
I love it. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And then this piece here.
This was so much fun. This was for, so there's a graphic novel series based on the podcast, The Adventure Zone.
Okay.
And so the graphic novel is illustrated by my good friend, Carrie Peach, and the publisher is First Second, who I worked with before for Compass South and Knife's Edge. And so they contacted me asking if I would like to do a piece for their like back of the book gallery of fan work. And so this was essentially fan art that I did professionally.
Nice.
I got paid to do this piece of fan art for this comic book series in this podcast that I'm a big fan of. And this is one of the characters. And so I basically just had a blast making him really horny, essentially. Just wanted to make him really hot.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. Once again, I mean, I love your palette. It's great. I saw this on the site. These I dug so much.
Yeah, and I was trying to. This was from like earlier this year. I was trying to do some speed paintings, like trying to build up my painting skills again, because I got a background art gig for Cartoon Network, and I was trying to sort of like stretch my legs a bit after I'd finished Salt Magic and before this other job started. I just wanted to have some fun. So I did this as part of a series of just like what can you do in 2 hours, you know?
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean, it's. I mean, I love how you're saturating your colors in this.
Yeah, I mean that's straight from the photo. I would go around my neighborhood just take photos.
No, they're beautiful. I love
beautiful day that day.
Love that. And then this was the last of the sort of the illos.
Yeah, this is for the WeWork series. I did like 30 illustrations for WeWork.
Oh, great!
And it was a great collaboration. They gave me an office in one of their locations, and in exchange for that office space, I did a series of illustrations, like 3 to 6 per month.
Oh, wow.
Based on their different office spaces and features. They have a spa, like a WeWork branded spa in Manhattan. And I went there, I took a ton of photos, and I just did a whole big series of illustrations. And this is one of they have like a big hot tub.
It's great.
It's very fancy looking.
Yeah, I mean...
It's a very simple animation too. Like everything's still except for the lip of the water. That is the only thing that's moving. And then just kind of some steam is rising.
Yeah.
So I love stuff like that where it's tricks. It looks like it's really realistic or like emotively animated, like atmospheric, but it's just 1 or 2 things that are actually moving.
It's really cool. It's real cool. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, it was one thing that I was...
Mesmerizing.
Yeah. There's one thing we were talking. So when we were talking to Hope about Salt Magic.
Salt Magic.
There was something that we were discussing that way, to look at my ugly. Yeah, it's there, I was looking at this and how like this cover, sort of really separates itself from the 2 previous covers you guys worked on together. There you go. Look at that. You got
there's the real deal.
No.
It's a wraparound cover too. So the full illustration, which I haven't released, is like just tons of clouds.
Oh wow!
So
I loved how you just sort of really. You guys said, "Oh, I'm going to paint the cover. I'm not going to go a linear comic book
right
sort of approach. I'm going to paint this, and I think the effect is just so wonderful to see. And when she shared some interior pages, which I have the interior pages, which don't have copies, so this is what Hope shared. I was just fascinated. Looking at your previous work.
Actually, I gave you interiors of Compass South and Knife's Edge as well.
Yeah, I know.
You can see there's a distinct style change. Yes.
Well, there's a huge style change, and not only, and when I say huge, I don't really mean stylistically in the drawing aspect. You leveled up there, but your color approach is really, really stepped up in the relationship, and we were just marveling at your composition, but your texture and color approach in these pages they're stunning.
Well, thank you. I am very proud of them.
You should be.
I really wanted, I had a very specific vision in mind, basically, for this book. And I think I've talked about this with some friends. I think it's great to have a visual style per project. Mm-hmm. Like not think of it as like, this is my next book, it's just going to be in my style. But what does the project itself call for? And that's why you can see that in my portfolio. Like every single thing looks different. I can't choose, essentially. That's one of my problems. But for this one, it's different from Compass South and Knife's Edge thematically. Mm-hmm. And so it needed to feel different. And so at the very beginning, very consciously, I was thinking, what is the style going to be? How does that play into the theme? And I wanted it to be very like clouds. I thought of like puffy, sort of rounded shapes. And like the way I draw wrinkles is deliberately different in these characters. The way I draw hair, the way I draw trees, it's all distinct. The style was tailor-made for Salt Magic. Yeah. And I tried to make it consistent throughout, make it unique to the book.
Yeah, it's impressive, but it's just, it has like, I know it sounds stupid, but like a storybook quality to it, like, it's just a storybook quality that's like this. I feel like I'm in this different world and story just by looking at the artwork.
Oh, I hope so. That's totally my goal. So hooray.
Yeah, no, it's just super, super exciting. So I was blown away by that. So how did that project come to fruition with you? And Hope, that like, did she ring you up and say, hey, I
got another one for you?
Yeah. Do you have a year and a half free?
At the time. Yeah, basically that was what it was. We had finished Knife's Edge. We had only had plans to do those two books. I'm super proud of those two books also. Mm-hmm. I still look at that art and think like, I did a good job with these. And I loved those stories as well. And so when Hope came to me with a new one, I was like, yes, of course. I love Hope's stories so much. And this had a similar feel to Compass South, Knife's Edge. It was historical, which is kind of my wheelhouse now. But it was fantasy, which was this genre I hadn't quite stepped into yet. So it was also new. And I'm a sucker for anything I've never done before. So when she sent me the outline, I read it. There were a couple parts distinctly in the story and like the themes that she was exploring that really spoke to me and was totally the kind of story that if I could choose any story in the world, I would have wanted to do next. And so when she asked, would you like to illustrate this with me? I jumped on it. We got things going. For the first year, I was just doing like visual development while she was writing. And I have all of my sketches here.
Oh, cool.
So what I did was I have little folders and they're labeled. This one's called Seer, which is the Salt Witch's world that she lives in.
Okay.
And so I wanted to really think about the visual development for this book and like, what's the distinct look of all of these fantasy worlds and fantasy elements. And for Seer, I really thought of like Moroccan architecture and Middle Eastern architecture, as well as French castles, because Hope and I both love French castles. Hope specifically gave me some references of French castles. And so I was trying to marry basically different things that didn't go together for a lot of this.
Yeah.
So like a lot of this is like me sketching references of really cool fireplaces, because the fireplaces show up a lot. And like the library scene, and you never see the library in full, but I know where all of the furniture is in the library.
Good. Right, that's important to understand.
Yeah, because that way you know how to panel it. you know,
Yeah, sure.
where your
If you're
camera
blocking-
is.
If you're blocking your scene,
Yeah, here are all of the different layouts of the castle, like the way the windows look
Yeah.
you're
and
like
stuff.
a dungeon master.
Yes, exactly. That's what I felt like. And there's a different folder. There's like the farm. The farm is based on a real house.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't it? There is. So it's a flat pack house. There's these Sears houses. You could mail order a whole house and it would come to you in planks, and you would build it.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Sears catalog's house.
And there's fandom for it. There are people who are obsessed with Sears houses.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They go around, they look for them, they take pictures, and they have blogs. And so I went and I found a specific model of house that had the right number of bedrooms and the right like room sizes for the different scenes. And I was like, this house, okay. Does this house exist anywhere? And I went and I looked, and there is one version of this house in Connecticut that someone took a bunch of creepy photos of. It's not their house. And I got the address, and I went on Google Globe, Google Worlds, and I zoomed in creepily on the house so I could get the size proportions of the roof. So anytime you see that house in the book, it is from reference. I made sure everything fit.
Wow. What I grew up in Connecticut. What town?
Ooh, I mean, I don't want to give it away. I feel like that's the level where I have to be like,
you can send it. You can send it to me off air.
yeah. I'll send you the link. I still have it bookmarked.
Good. I want to creep it myself. So, but it's super exciting. Like, so you're doing your work, a lot of at least a fair amount of your workup stuff, you know, with a pencil on copy paper and just building.
Yeah, it's the best for visual development for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you use markers? Do you develop your color palettes in a specific fashion, or how?
Oh, for coloring?
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Coloring's all digital, really. I definitely went for a watercolor style for this book, but I don't actually use watercolors much. I do play with markers and gouache for fun.
Yeah.
And I am a trained painter. I know color theory.
In theory.
Yes. But if I'm doing color work for fun, a lot of time I'm really just playing around in Photoshop.
Yeah. Okay.
You have a ton of freedom.
Yeah, I mean, I think Photoshop can do some really cool stuff with, you know, color development, because you can take photographs and you can sort of like reduce out all the detail of an image and then just be left with the color, because you can just kind of take the color and start making smears and develop palettes, you know, from existing photographs.
Just from like accidents.
Yeah.
And it's completely forgiving. So, you know, you're not wasting paper, you're not wasting your paints.
Yeah, no, I
you can come up with really crazy stuff.
There's a lot of kind of cool magic that you can do. So you spent like nearly a year sort of developing the look of the book.
Possibly on and off again. So like I'm doing freelance at the same time.
You're still eating.
Yes.
But I mean, so is Hope like feeding you anything? Like, she's like, hey, here's my ideas for these characters. And you're like, okay, cool. And you're kind of doing rounds of character designs, or how's that working?
Kind of with some of it. Yeah. We'll have, I'll get occasional snippets of the script. Like she was writing the script at this point.
Yeah.
And fleshing it out and sending me drafts. So every time there was a new draft, I would get that. And I would read through it, make my notes. That for me, like I would make a little list of like, okay, here are the things I'm going to research. Like Sear, what's the house look like? Let's do that this week, you know? And I would send her my sketches. And then she would say like, oh, I really like this, especially. And so I'd make a note of that. I'd be like, okay, this is what Hope was going for, hopefully with that.
And it's cool that she can draw as well. So you can kind of like, there's at least a shared language.
Lovely thing working with another artist. Yes.
Yeah. That's a super big advantage, because, you know, often, you know,
with the writers, often they don't understand paneling and pacing and things.
There's a whole bunch. There can be, you know, I mean, that cross language, you know, can be a problem sometimes, but that's so cool. So now what, you know, I mean, we don't really talk, you know, we talk a lot of people who are doing, you know, stapled, you know, regular size comic books. So there's a very different sort of mindset and an approach you have to have when dealing with a book that's over 100 pages long versus, you know, 20 pages. So you have this, you know, and I'll say luxury of time for development. Yes. You have a luxury in that respect, but there is a huge volume of work that has to be produced. Mm-hmm. And how do you approach this, you know, this relatively daunting task of, all right, I've got to produce this amount of work and, you know, and whatever the deadline is that the, you know, publisher is.
Yeah. Great question. It's, you know, it's been so many years since I started a new book and I am starting a new one now, which we'll get to, but I don't remember how I started Salt Magic. I think I know that I did tiny thumbs for all the pages, and then I blew those up and I redid the thumbs at full size. So I had very rough layouts, but at full size, and so I was able to do them quite quickly. But I do not remember if I just went through the whole book and thumbnailed it first and then went back and redid it.
I feel I would have done that.
Or if I was doing it, no, because I would have forgotten what I had thumbnailed in the first chapter. I must have done it in shifts. I think I did.
Yeah.
But I would have to trawl through my emails to find out, because I would be sending my thumbnails to Hope.
Sure. Yeah. So, and I saw some of you sent along some of your thumbnail, your sort of rough and thumbnail work, and I could see how you sort of like you.
That's my old woman's pages still have like my thumbnails on it. You can see exactly that's what it looks like, just chicken scratch.
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, circle, upside down U, like you just kind of sort of block all the. They're very much like, like an Mondrian painting or something like that,
Yes.
So it's kind of an interesting kind of approach when you're looking at the early stages.
Yeah. Thumbnailing is so fun, but also like the worst. Like it's the worst. I want to throw myself out my window when I'm thumbnailing, but also it's so interesting and so gratifying when you nail it.
Well, why do you say it's the worst? I mean, what do you feel that there's too much pressure on, or
so much pressure?
Yeah.
I was talking to my friend yesterday about it. We were both in the same place in our projects. We're both thumbnailing stuff right now, and we were both like, it's because every page has to be perfect. It has to be perfect, and if it's not, we're gonna die. That's the feeling. That's what's going on in our heads. If it's not perfect, and if it doesn't make total sense, and if every joke doesn't land, and all the panels don't work, I don't know. There's no point in living. And you have to do it 200 times in a row.
Yeah.
So you have to focus. And for someone with slight ADHD, it's so hard to do that. Everything else is cake after that.
Yeah, I think for me, what I always found the worst part of the process, it was inking, because my proclivity to want to finish pencils versus
pencils are great.
Yeah, but then I would finish the pencils and go, oh, now I got to ink this again. I got to do it all over again. It was always just like I somehow spooled myself that and then you just keep drawing, and rather than like, okay, I'm going to stop here, because it was insecurity of like, am I going to know what to do when I go at this with a brush, or am I going to just, I don't know. I guess I'm just going to draw 4 bread loaves for a hand here, because
yes.
Yeah,
and there's a mentality. You have to keep that mentality in the back of your mind, which is, it's a comic book. It's not precious. You have to finish it. Yeah. So you have to go. You cannot sit there and dawdle over a hand. So 4 bread loaves is a great method, because you just floop and floop and then go. Because the whole comic book has to work. Each panel, if it's too detailed, your reader's gonna stop reading. They're gonna be bored.
Right.
So in inking, you're right. It's just so dull, because you've done all the fun stuff, which is make all of your decisions. And in sketching, you don't have to make it clean. So you can have fun. You can just do the swoopy lines and, say, I'll clean it up later. I'll make sure it works at the end. But you have to leave all the hard stuff.
And I feel like you were talking about the precious factor, but I feel that the the computer, working in the computer, Photoshop, or if you're using, Clip Studio, like the one thing that's nice is that it doesn't feel as precious as it does when it's a piece of paper, in India ink. You go, okay, well, I get one.
Oh, yeah, no way. I've almost never done traditional inked comics for this reason. It's way too precious.
It's incredibly precious, and
you spend almost the same amount of time cleaning it up afterwards.
Yeah,
why do that?
You're like, you have to really kind of get into this sort of Zen state when you go into with the inking, approach. Although like that's how I feel. I think Gary is not like that when it came to actual like inking on paper, because Gary's methodology of inking is much more, I don't know, visceral. Is that a better way? Is that a
visceral is a good word for it?
Yeah, I think Gary, you're inking, like your manual labor of inking. Especially, traditionally was, I would say, visceral.
And you're getting all of that tactile energy from hand inking something. And that's something you really can't reproduce with digital unless you're doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
People love tactile. People love textures. It's why you put digital textures on your colors.
Yeah.
Because people want to feel like they can touch the drawing, even if it's been printed.
I think that's a huge thing. That's like, and I don't do a volume of comic book artwork enough to like, sort of make these sort of the level advances of this. So, but what I do notice when I do something, I'm like, oh, that, and then I go like, something's missing. Oh, what's missing is texture. Like it's not there because this artificial world of, pixels can be perfect, but it can be perfectly flat. And so the intention is how do you inject humanity into these
exactly
pieces?
That's what our eyeballs are looking for.
Right. Well, we want to see the imperfections because that's something that we can go like, oh, I've seen something that changes this from being just a circle tool, like to that to be a hand-drawn circle. Like that's
you can see the person behind it. You can connect with the other human on the other side of this process.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. So what was the time frame for producing the artwork for Salt Magic?
I'm gonna have to make like an actual calendar for this because it was long. I think I started somewhere in 2017. I officially started working on the thumbnails.
Okay.
And then I wrapped everything up at the end of last year officially. We came back and did some edits, but that was it. So 2018, 19. So it was over the course of 4 years. And the reason it was spread out is because I had to keep stopping because I had to keep making money. So I would pause the project and be like, I have to go work for WeWork for 3 or 4 months. I have to take a semester off to teach. I have to take a month off to do this animation project, so on and so forth. Take 6 months off to recover from an RSI. That kept happening, and a time stretch that kept happening. The thing about the graphic novel advance is that it really wasn't living money. So it was basically, and also at the beginning, I promised myself, like, I'm not going to take shortcuts with this. I'm going to make the work good. If you're going to make a graphic novel, at this point, I felt really that I wanted to make it worth the trouble of reading.
Yeah.
Sort of, I didn't want someone to feel exhausted for me looking at it. I didn't want it to feel like I had rushed it at any point.
Well, that's, and it's interesting because, you're working on a project that is over the course of, years now versus something that you are, okay, got a deadline, it's got to be done next week or at the end of the month or whatever the thing is. And it's an interesting thing, I write and I write prose. So I'm working on these incredibly lengthy timelines with the novel because it's not just, like I can bang out a draft, in about 80 days. So I could do 150,000 words in 80 days. That's sort of like
impressive.
That's the sort of the working pace. But like, it just like you are like, you have this sort of time in your hands and you look and you're constantly like, wait, that chapter, like there was this thing that happened and maybe I could like, and like, it's, so there's this endless sort of like, sort of like monkey wrenching sort of, interest. And when you're looking at a project of, the duration that you're working on, did you have to like lock it away from yourself or did you allow yourself a certain amount of like, revisiting?
Yeah. Well, with this one, it's definitely mostly locked in by the time the script comes to me. And if anything's changing after that, it's happening at certain points. So when I am handed the script, I'm going to create the graphic novel based on that script. And then if we want to make edits, we're going to make them at the sketch stage when I turn in the full sketched graphic novel. And that's what we did. That's like, again, I have examples. Hang on.
Okay. I love examples.
Oh my goodness.
Sure.
Yanked these out of nowhere. Okay. See all these Post-it notes?
Yeah.
See there's a ton of them. And then on each page, there's like copious handwritten notes and several different pins because it's me, Margaret, and Hope all making little notes on the sketches and saying, okay, we need to move this word bubble, change the expression on this face. It's not working. And I think it's not either at this stage or the inks. I think it was at this stage. I asked to add some stuff because I felt like there were some scenes that needed to be stretched out, and they were mostly visual scenes. And this is not adding dialogue. This is literally me saying, as the artist, to tell this story, we need this chase scene to be 2 extra pages long, and I can do it, and this is what it's going to look like. I sent them like a rough sketch of it. And at that point, they were like, okay, we see the whole book. We know what it's going to look like. We see your points. You can add this in. That is going to improve the story. And so that's how you keep yourself from the constant edits, which is you say, I meet this checkpoint, and then we can discuss it, because we have the entire piece all as one, and we can see what's working and what's not.
Yeah. As long as your changes are even numbers, you're in better shape.
Yes, that's the key. Is that I was like, I had to pitch it as like, don't worry, we can add a spread, and that way it all works out.
The gangs will be okay. We can keep this going. Yeah.
As you see, I worked on everything in spreads. Like, this is the Photoshop file.
Right. Okay.
I didn't do these pages individually because I had to. I forget which artist said it, but like, you have to think of comics as spreads, because they're going to be seen as spreads unless you're looking at a digital copy, which some people do. But the spread has to work, even if they're 2 individual pages. They have to balance each other. They can't be like starkly different in tone, in color, in energy. Right. You know, you want everything to flow as you turn the pages.
It's interesting because we didn't get the luxury so much of that when doing comics.
No, yeah, you're working in individual pages
because there's advertising, and like like how you hear these people saying, "Oh, the writer's thinking about when the page turn is going to be like." No, that was not indicated, in the scripts. We didn't,
I read some of those scripts. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, we're not really told like, hey, now this is the big moment. So like really pay out this last panel because we're going to switch the page and it's going to be a big reveal, like it could be a spread.
That's super important. You got to nail those moments. If you don't have that stuff like figured out at the script stage or even the thumbnail stage, like you're out in the water with no paddle.
Yeah, no,
it's a comic book.
It's tough. So I mean, in the magic world, in the wonderful world, you can get to do that in the monthlies, not all the time, which is a little sad. Weep. Yeah.
I weep for you. Problem.
I don't lose sleep over it. That's the thing. I don't lose sleep over. So okay, so cool. So I mean, this is a labor of love, to say the least.
To say the least.
In the duration of work, it's interesting because I think you have to have a specific mindset or personality to be able to work on a project that has such a lengthy timeline. Because I don't think a lot of people. Like, Gary, do you think would you be able to focus on a project, that lasted 4 years? I think that answers that.
Fair. That's legit.
If I'm getting paid, the annual salary that's worth it, yes.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, no,
Especially if it's just like boring,
Oh, if it's boring, I'm out.
Get it? No.
Yeah. But that's the thing. I had to make every single page fun for myself.
Sure.
Yeah.
Every single one of these pages I care about, and I found a reason to care about it. And I thought about Hope's script so much, about what each of these pages was saying, what the point was to include this scene or this beat, like how it all played into the larger story. And I hope that comes through. I don't know.
Well, I mean, artistically, from what I've seen, from what we've seen, I think absolutely the answer is yes. I mean, it's, the leveling up is clear.
You've done your homework. You've done your research. You've done it all. This is.
Do I get an A+?
Yes.
That's all I want.
Is that going to be our comic ranking system? We're going to grade like teachers. Well, Gary is a teacher, so maybe that.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
No, please don't give me a grade.
I give you an A+.
Wow.
No.
Oh, boy.
You're doing it. You're killing it.
That's all I wanted to. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to be like, this is what I can do. Spending a lot of time.
You're doing it. You're doing it.
This is what comics can do. That's what I wanted it to be.
That's Jocelyn Stone's line. This is what she's like, this is what comics can be. That was her line when she first discovered comics. And I love that line. It's one of my
That's a great line. That's totally every single time I come across like a beautiful spread or like genius like panel sequence, it's just like, wow.
Yeah.
I can't believe that this and this and this creates like this so much emotion in my heart right now.
Yep.
They're very powerful and they can do a lot.
No, it's I mean, listen, it's an incredibly strong medium. I mean, it's the the one thing that it affords over film or television is that you can live in that second, that whatever that moment is on the page, you can just hold it there for as long as you want.
Yeah.
It's not
go back and forth.
Freeze framing, you lose all of the elements that make film. It stops being film at that moment. But in a comic book, you can just sit on that moment, and it's it is its own form of visual magic.
Yes, it is magic.
Yeah. I think there's something super cool.
And you as the creator also can control that.
Yeah,
that's what's so it's so enticing to be able to completely control the visuals of an entire story.
It's like, it's like control over time and space.
Yes,
you really have this ability, to move in time in the way and the way you want to do it, which is, I think that's one of the great luxuries and the hardest task of storytelling is that management of time. How do
it does feel like a weight sometimes when you know what you're trying to say with your story, but you cannot figure out how to put it into time and space within the page.
Right.
And you feel like it's completely possible because you've read 1 million comics at this point. But you just can't choose. You can't see it. And then the moment you do feel like a fucking wizard.
Yeah, exactly. I love
Even
that.
if it's the simplest comic in the world.
No, but it's so true, and I think that probably sort of rounds back to your statement of struggling with thumbnailing, because thumbnailing is this moment of time management. How do you move this story in time in a sensible fashion, in a unique fashion, and in an engaging fashion?
How do you do that? How does it happen?
Well, crazy. Yeah, but you go back to the well, how do you come up with your ideas? I think there's this inherent creative problem solving ability that you develop and you hone over repetition in time and experience that allows
you psych yourself up to it too.
Yeah,
you get out of your own head. That's like the gift and the curse of it is, especially with thumbnails, is that you leave your body for a moment and you see just the story happening and it flows out of you.
Right.
That's like the moment of pure creation. That's always so wonderful.
Yeah, it's like a combination of pantomime and then sort of controlling like a 3D like environment. And
seriously.
My mentor that was one thing that he sort of taught me when I was a fledgling artist. And he said the way I view it is I view it as like I'm holding a mini cam, and there's a scene and there's a set and all these characters are in the set and they're in the place that they're logically in place where they need to be for whatever's happening. And then I move the camera around to find that angle that's going to tell the necessary bit of storytelling and hopefully the most.
Yes. You gotta have the camera right in the right place. What are you focusing on? Because the story totally changes based on where you're looking.
Oh, for sure. And so I learned to sit there and I would put all these pieces in my head, and then I would just move the camera around and I'd look and I'm like, okay, okay, wait here, there, wait here. And then you go, okay, I've got it, at that point. And I would even like go so far as to sort of create an overhead, just like where I put circles where in square and rectangles where the elements were.
Totally.
And then I would place where I wanted the camera to be. I'm like, okay, now I know where that shot is coming from. And I don't even have to draw it at that point. Like I know when I come back to it, I'm going to have my, my shorthand that's going to say, this is what you're thinking about, dummy.
Yeah, that's smart. It's a great technique.
Yeah, I don't know.
You want it like the angle is really important, and knowing where your characters are in space, which is the same reason I do all the floor plans.
Right.
For every single room that any scene is happening in, because I want to think about where I'm putting these characters to best tell the story in that moment. What else is going to look the best? What's going to be prettiest?
Did you do that before? Like, did you do that before you got into animation, or was this sort of like, did you pick up sort of chops of animation, like how because that's very process driven. You know, the
I think
animation world.
animation definitely played a part.
Mhm.
Because I wasn't doing that before. I'm sure that it played into it. Because the background art I was doing was like I was seeing the storyboard, I was seeing the characters, and I was purely coming up with the backgrounds based on what was needed for the scene.
Yeah.
And so I got really good at, and I already been quite good at sort of like seeing like a corner of a room and drawing it in perspective. Like that was just something I could do.
Mm-hmm.
But thinking about the storytelling impact of which angles do what was something I didn't get so into until after I graduated and I started doing background art. And it's so interesting.
That is cool. That's really cool. Now, did you have any people like outside of like, you know, once you got out of school, were there any people like professionals, you know, in the industry that you were able to sort of learn from, like experience and, you know, and sort of get into the nitty gritty discussion, not peers, but people sort of, I guess, above, like sort of that you looked up toward?
Yeah, definitely. Moving to New York was great for that reason, is that I was very quickly sort of dropped into mostly peers, honestly, not a lot of like industry professionals, but like people who were already like publishing and putting work out and building their own stories and just getting into deep conversation about what comics were, what we wanted to do. Like there was like a drink and draw club that I attended for a long time when I first moved to New York. And I mean, you know, people would come and go.
Because Kari Randolph was doing the drink and draw, I think, for a long time.
Yeah, it was possibly the same group, but like Daryl Io ran it for a long time. It was just an email chain.
Yeah.
And people came in and out. Raina came for a couple times. Meredith Gran, Octopus Pie, great webcomic, like came in and out. And these were people that I was seeing at a distance at comic conventions.
Sure.
And then I was, you know, meeting them for coffee or a drink, and not really going up to them and being like, "Tell me about your life," but mingling, and, you know, going to after show events and stuff and just chatting with people.
Yeah,
that was very formative.
Yeah, it's super interesting. You know, we were fortunate, you know, to go to art school in New York City with, you know, when Will Eisner was our teacher and that kind of jazz. So we were all just endlessly talking about comic books and storytelling, blah blah blah. But when you get into the other side of it, and you're in the business and you're at the conventions, you know, there's this whole new wealth of understanding, because you see somebody do something, you're like, how did you do that? You know, and then you're putting them, you know, the thumb screws to a friend, going, how did you do this? You know, and you let them tell you, you know, how they came up with this sort of solution, and you go, oh my God. And it just is this give and take. So
it's really, and these are small conversations too. These are like little side things that you might ask one day, and it opens up this whole like avenue of thought for you.
Yeah.
It changes your whole direction. And you realize like, oh, I could do it that way.
Yeah. I
could make a zine this way and just like print 100 of them in a day. Like, I can't believe that. That's crazy.
We had a recent guest who had I guess they had done their first. They did some book. Oh no, it was what's his name from Cartoonist Kayfabe, Jim Rugg, and he said like his first comic that he had done, he'd like printed out like, you know, 500 copies, you know, like, you know, this comic book that, you know, professionally done, goes to a show and like didn't sell one, you know, and then he realized like, oh, everybody's just Xeroxing these things and stapling them together. And that's how you do a zine. So I thought that was just fantastic, you know, because, you know, the dream and ambition of like, I want to be a comic book, you know, creator, you know, but I love that. Yeah. So, I mean, it's super exciting, you know, to have like the dialogue between, you know, creators is always some of the most inspired conversation you can ever have.
Oh, totally. It's really exciting to be able to engage in those conversations. Oh, even if you're just like a creator starting out, like if you've tried stuff out or like you've tried to publish a thing, like you can engage. You can talk to someone else who's also tried it, and you can get a lot out of that conversation.
I agree. And I think that's, I mean, listen, it's understandable to put somebody on a pedestal when you're a fan of something, and it's really easy to kind of do that. But, you know, I always say, like, if you just say, hey, I've got this question and I can't solve this problem, you know, as long as it's not this huge sort of diatribe that you're sort of, you know, needing from them, most everyone's just going to give you the answer.
Yeah.
You know, and politely.
Yeah, it's a little harder now, but definitely if someone comes up to me at a show and just says like, "Hey, how do you do panels?" Or like, what do you think of like the philosophy of like only working in like grids or like totally blowing panels out of the water? I'm thinking about panels a lot. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That kind of like small questions like that. I'm always like, I would love to tell you everything about what I think about panels because I think about them all day long.
Do you challenge yourself? Like, because like, I mean, I know that like I would sometimes just be like, okay, you know, because there's times that you're just not truly inspired by the, you know, to approach
by the question. Yeah.
Yeah, and like so I mean, you would do the thing of like, well, okay, like let me just start like making compositions based off of letters. You know, I'm just gonna go, okay, I'm gonna grab I'm just gonna throw some letters on the you know, like, you know, boggle. I'm gonna shake the boggle thing, and okay, well, this is gonna be a K, this is gonna be a G, this is gonna, and then you just compose the panel accordingly.
Yeah. I do that. Sometimes, like when you're staring at a page for long enough that you start to not see it anymore. Sometimes you just want to make like a little mark, like you said, like draw a shape that's kind of like a letter, like draw an L shape, and just sort of stare at it and be like, okay, what would it look like if I did the panels kind of like this?
Right.
Would that work? Would that fit the beats in that I want? And sometimes you find the answer. Other times I'll go look at books like this big stack. I didn't pull these from these are the books that are on my desk right now. There's just
show
those that I reference.
All right, just show us what you just have, like, because I always, like, Gary, you have a bunch of comics like at your table, right?
You read this
right
one?
here.
So good. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
See?
I mean, it's like you can't help but not have comics sitting at your table when you're drawing, or books, just books in general.
Because what you do is
have
you open
books
it up
to
and you're like,
inspire.
Yeah,
let's find
totally.
a scene that's kind of like the scene that I'm trying to write right now, like the same kind of vibe or action or conversation scene. Like, how did this person do it? And why did it work? Like, because they start with a wide shot and then close in, and what does that say? Or did they start with a detail and then move somewhere else? And did they break it into 3 beats or 2? And like, what did they pick out? And again, why does that work? And when you go through a whole book, when you go through a whole stack of books, like 20 different books, looking for that kind of stuff, and then try to look at a wide variety, you remember what comics, how they work in a way that you felt blocked before. And it's always like breaks me right out of my writer's block. Where it like, oh wow, this character, like you can see them on 3 different places on this spread, and they go close up, wide shot, close up again, and that tells this emotional story in that way. But the scene changes, even though you keep seeing this character. Like, what is that doing? That always is what I end up doing when I'm really stuck.
I mean, that's interesting. I mean, I like both approaches. Like one where you just sort of force yourself, you know, like you said, you make a mark, and now you've got to sort of accept this mark and do something with it. And then the other one is sort of the you know, I guess the thoughtful approach. Like, okay, now I'm going to, like, there's a reactive approach and then there's a thoughtful approach. And the other one is, okay, let me do a little inspirational research here and try to come up with that next, you know, answer to that.
Yeah. Like listening to music, it's just sort of resets.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's interesting. Like, music was a nonstop thing, you know, when in my drawing years. I mean, because you could just, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if there's words, because it's the different side of your brain. So, you know, unfortunately, I don't get to listen to like the music I would always listen to when drawing, when I'm writing, because words, you know, and words are confusing the words that I'm trying to come up with in my head to put on a piece of paper.
Listen to music when you're writing.
Can't listen to like TV or anything when you're writing or thumbnailing.
No.
But you can when you're inking.
Oh yeah.
Big time for podcasts and TV shows.
Oh yeah,
for sure. And I think that's
totally.
It's nice because it is just a different chunk of your brain that allows you to kind of, you know, do that. For me, it ends up being jazz. I listen to jazz when I'm writing. Yeah. So when I'm writing, I can do the jazz and keep going. But if all of a sudden someone starts bebopping, I got to quickly, like, I'm like, someone's scatting, I got to get rid of the scat.
Oh no, I love scat. I love oh god, I'm gonna blank on the name. There's like an album of sort of like swing music that I always go to.
Okay.
Always go back to. I also listen to opera quite a lot. And I love that I can listen to words, but it's all in Italian, so
Sure.
I don't know what they're saying. And it makes me feel things because I feel like I'm yelling those words at the same time, but
Yeah.
they can be whatever I'm feeling at the time.
I think that counts. If you can't understand what they're saying, then it's all right. So you could listen to, French pop music and not be distracted by the
Yes.
language,
And Japanese rock music at the same time.
Sure.
Same appeal. It's Louis Prima.
Oh, yeah.
Oh God, so good.
Yeah. Well, you can't go wrong with Louis
There's
Prima.
like a Louis Prima live album.
Yeah.
It's delicious. Just
All right.
it makes me happy.
Nice. Well, I'm a huge fan of the right thing to listen to when you're doing the thing. It's
Yeah, your power album. You're like your go-to that you're going to get through the next half hour of work because this music is a comfort to you.
So I'm constantly staggered by the alacrity of so many artists these days, and I'm curious if you're sitting down with a bunch of you have your thumbnails for the day.
Mm-hmm.
How long is it taking you to sort of pencil and ink a page?
Oh, thumbnails are done.
Yeah.
How long does it take to pencil a page or ink it? I would say a day.
Okay, so you
It
can
might be less.
Okay, but you can pencil and ink in one day, and
Not pencil and ink.
okay, so you can pencil a page in a work day.
Yeah, and it might be like 2 in a work day, or like I might go for a spread in a work day.
All right.
And then the really tough pages might take a couple days.
Yeah.
And then it's the same for inking. Penciling and inking kind of take me about the same amount of time.
Yeah. No, that's kind of what I was saying earlier. Is like I never really on a professional level. Now I can kind of do it where I can put that 60 to 70% down, and I can ink in that final 30% to that needed thing because I can see it much better now. And maybe I have just more of it. And it's
and sometimes it happens where like the pencils are just so perfect that you just you like the inking takes no time at all. It might take like a couple hours and you're done.
Right.
Those are good days.
So you are a devotee of Photoshop, which I love Photoshop. It's a fantastic program.
A slave to Photoshop.
Last year I bought Clip Studio.
Yeah, me too.
And I gotta tell you, man, as far as tools go for making a comic book, it's better.
Yeah, I know.
The things that I still haven't nailed, I have not. It doesn't have the same sort of like the problem solving things that Photoshop does when it comes to handling color.
Yeah.
Like I don't seem to have the access to those sort of quick access to the tools that I need to shoot. I got to drop the saturation down here. I got to increase the saturation. Whatever the thing that I need to do quickly, I don't have that in Clip Studio that I do in Photoshop. But when it comes to like, here's a blank canvas, and you can automatically set up your pages, setting up your gutters. So nice.
It's pretty nice. I have not figured out how to do it yet. There's a learning curve to that program.
I mean, but like with any learning, I mean, you remember, listen, Photoshop, I mean, it's like, what, how do I, what? But there's this thing that like, it's really amazing. I think the pencil is a better pencil.
Yeah, a lot of people have told me that.
It feels
like the pencil a lot,
and I like the inking a lot better. I think the line quality it's stronger.
And it's a program built for comic book artists.
Well, that's the thing. That's it was
like developed for manga artists.
Yes, I mean Photoshop is an amazing tool, and it's really amazing for photographs. So, while I don't know if I would really want to do any, sort of photo editing in Clip Studio. But yeah, I don't know. I'm truly impressed by the program. I mean, I love the built-in, the perspective, the built-in perspective grid.
Love it.
So you can really, really bang out like a room,
Yeah. And you can lock to your perspective grid in that program, right? The way you can in Procreate.
Yes. And it's, so it
really a lifesaver sometimes.
And a time saver.
Yeah.
Like it's just that thing that like and once again, I think there's a native sort of intelligence you have to develop with any program to where you're thinking like chess, where you're thinking a few moves ahead naturally rather than having to think a few moves ahead, where that's where I feel I am with Clip. I go like, oh, okay, wait. Okay,
That's a good way of putting it.
So yeah, oh, that's interesting. I'm just curious because I would, I don't know. I hope you end up doing some pieces in it and work your way over toward it, because I think I know.
The thing. I'm at the point in a project where if I'm going to start using Clip Studio, now is the time to start.
Right.
And I'm just dragging my feet because I
get it.
I'm at a point where I want to stick with my comfort zone, and my comfort zone is like doing my little chicken scratch thumbnails on a piece of paper and then blowing them up in Photoshop. That's just what I've always done.
Yeah.
But you're right. I've seen like people knock out layouts for a whole book so quickly and so efficiently with their timeline tool, where you can just set up the whole book at once. And like, God, that's so smart. It's exactly what you need.
Right. It's
to organically move through a whole project, go back and forth with pages and stuff, and see layouts the way you're supposed to be able to see them.
Like, by gum, that's what I need. Oh wait, it's right here. I can do it right now. But it is. I mean, it's like
there isn't a tutorial online for it though. You literally do have to do the thing that you're talking about, which is go find someone who knows what they're doing and ask them to teach you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're like, please take the time and tell me how this program works.
Well, I think that's the case with so many things. I mean, like, Gary's like, he leveled up on his coloring skills because he sought somebody out and said, okay, hey, listen, I need you to teach me a few things. Yeah. And this person taught Gary a bunch of stuff. And like,
I need more lessons.
You ran out.
He's plateaued. Gary's plateaued. Mayday. But it's a thing you do. You do that and you get that next thing. And I totally get it. It's like what you need to be is you need to be in a studio with somebody doing this and just working.
I need to be like with a deadline crunch or something. Like I need the adrenaline rush of like, okay, I have to figure this out today in an hour. Right. And then I'll be done.
Like force your mind to actually make those connections quicker. Yeah. It's interesting because I mean, we have a friend who's been on the show before who's he's a design, I don't know what he does, the character designs and background designs and item designs for a video game company.
Sure.
And he showed us a whole bunch of the stuff that he works on, and he shares stuff with me all the time. And I asked him, I said, "So what program are you working in?" He's like, "Oh, Photoshop." And like, Rebecca, like, it's ridiculous what he's doing in Photoshop.
You can pull 3D models into Photoshop and move them around.
He's not making 3D models. He's drawing.
But I mean, as reference, you can pull in if you need to draw a car for background art or for concept, because I've done this. So you buy that 3D model, you have someone build it for you, you get it for free, pull it into Photoshop, you literally just move it around. Yeah. So you get same way you can in Clip Studio. Yep. So you get the right perspective and then you just trace that.
Yeah, that's my next level up in Clip is accessing the 3D models and being able to move them around in Clip and then be able to draw on top of that, like, and then just get rid of that, that reference point, because
that's such a headache.
I know, but I'm sure it's super easy because there's a 21-year-old who's doing it with no thought whatsoever.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's it. And again, that's what Clip Studio is set up to do. Like all of those sort of mass-produced, like Webtoon, like webcomics that sort of utilize these stock backgrounds. Yep. The like Clip Studio inclusive online library of stock visuals and 3D models and brushes and stuff is all set up for people to have a collective library of things, because comics are not so much about like the individual's interpretation of visuals that we all collectively understand. Really effective comics are made out of sort of stock stuff that you've thrown together to tell the story as quickly and efficiently as you can.
I totally agree.
And that's what we're moving into. Yeah.
So let's reiterate to the folks out there, Salt Magic, it's pre-order. Oh, let's get the banner rolling. I've been so.
Hey, nice.
Get that banner rolling.
Thank you. Yes, there's a website. Me and my friends set it up. Actually, they set it up for me. They're in book marketing, so
Good friends.
it did me a solid. Saltmagicbook.com has all of the pre-order links and some of the reviews, and like the book page and stuff. So you can just head over there. The book comes out on October 12th, which is less than a month away, and I'm sweating every day. So yeah, I'm excited though.
It's great.
It's gonna be fun. I've got a lot of events and stuff coming up then too. So the problem is my feeds are just going to be me constantly saying, "Hey, I'm doing a talk. Hey, there's a blog post about my book. Please look at it, please."
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with doing the thing that you're doing.
Well, I'm usually pretty quiet, so
yeah.
Me suddenly posting a whole lot, it's because I'm promoting a book. So just deal with me.
Yeah, listen. I think everyone's going to give you a pass. It's okay. They're going to be.
I'm pretty
fine.
proud of this book. I'm so ready to shout from the mountaintops. It's finally here.
How many? So just nuts and bolts. How many pages is the book so people can know what to expect?
232 pages of art and words. It's in hardback and paperback, and I think you can get it digitally. You can pre-order the Kindle version.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But you won't see the spreads if you get the Kindle version. That's just
you might. You can set it up to show you spreads. I think
very small.
of illustrated books. Yeah. I love a book. I love an object. If you have the ability, or you can also request it from your local library if you don't want to buy it. That's completely fine. Or if you want to read a friend's copy, I don't care. Just read it. Go to the store, open it up, read it, put it back on the shelf.
I think the wonderful thing about when you actually are producing books as you are, these things go into libraries. Like these are ordered by libraries across the country, and
that has a lot to do with librarians hearing from people in the area or choosing because they've seen a review so it means a lot when people call up someplace and say, "Hey, I really like to read this book. Could you get it in stock?"
I have a contact with a really phenomenal librarian, and I'll pass on the information if she hasn't already heard about it. She reads something like 200 to 300 books a year, like novels.
Insane.
She's unbelievably prolific in her reading, and she writes. I mean, she writes books, and she's a full-time librarian. So she's made of different stuff than you or I.
That's incredible. Librarians are wonderful people.
Yeah.
The love for books is always staggering and beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being terrified about the library when I was a little kid, but they're doing the work. So, what else do you have coming up? You intimated that something else is on the horizon. So, what are people thinking about?
Well, I just finished my job with Cartoon Network, so I did a bunch of background art for the show Close Enough.
Oh, cool.
Which is season 3 will be airing next year. So if you watch that season, a lot of the episodes have background art drawn by me.
Nice.
I'm very proud of the work I did with that team. It was a lot of fun. Now I am working on my next graphic novel. This one I wrote myself.
Woohoo!
And I am terrified. And it's about ballet. So it's about kids who are really enthusiastic about a creative field, which is what I was at age 12. But in this case, it's ballet because it's in sort of collaboration with the ABT here in New York, American Ballet Theater. I like opera, so that was my way in. I said, I love this. I don't know as much about ballet, but I did study it as a kid. So I gave them my treatment, and they were going ahead with it. And so that's the book. And then I also have a lot of short comics that I want to do in the next year. While this other book is in development, I'm going to try to stick to books and not do a lot of freelance for the next year or so.
Fingers crossed.
Cross your fingers for me.
Yeah.
We'll see. But it should be okay. But the projects, the shorter comics will be coming out hopefully next summer.
Okay.
And I can't tell you much about those except
Are you writing them? Are you writing them, or are you with? Okay, cool.
I've done shorter comics, like I've done The Old Woman. I've done some fan comics and short zines, and so I'm doing more of that. And I'm very excited to get back to that.
Oh, that's great. Now, do you have publishers for these, or are you doing these?
For some of them, yeah. But I've got Random House Graphic is putting out the ballet book.
Good.
And then Bolgahan Press, which is a small press run by my friend Zach Clemente. He's putting out a short comic by me, hopefully next summer.
Yay.
And then maybe some other stuff, but I think I'm self-publishing that stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's super exciting. And people can find that, when this stuff is coming on the horizon by going to Rebecca Mock on Twitter.
Yes, usually Twitter, Instagram. You can buy my previous zines on my Gumroad, which I think there's a link on my website, but I think it's gumroad.com/ actually, it's like a weird name. It's like
Just go to RebeccaMock.com and you'll find it.
Go to Rebecca Mock, go to About. There's all the links. Click all of them, please.
Just click every link, go on there. That way Google's happy, you're happy, everyone's happy.
I'm so happy.
That's awesome. Let's take a sneak peek at what Gary's drawing.
Yeah.
Maybe he doesn't know.
I love getting mesmerized by what's
Yeah, go ahead, try that, buddy. That's awesome, dude. Like that one.
I love the creepy house in the back. That's awesome.
Right?
I love it, dude.
I love a creepy house. Yeah.
Nice.
I like these guys too. They're having fun.
These are Gary's characters from United Forces. I love it. It's so funny because when you first started this thing, the first things you laid down were the glows of the orb and the moon.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, why are there two orbs in this?
Right.
As you have been adding to it and putting the forest in now, I'm like,
right.
It's the moon.
I didn't know what was going to happen. I kind of had an idea, but I just go with the flow. And
that's fun. That's awesome.
I didn't know there was going to be ghosts in the front of it. So I
love a ghost. I love a paranormal element.
Well, it is that time of year, dude. It's that time of year. Yeah. I love it.
Right?
Yeah. Love it.
We're getting to that point. Yeah.
I know. That's fine. Yeah, because Phil drew a demon last week, so that only makes sense. Everyone's getting everyone's getting into the scary stuff.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm super psyched. I'm really excited to read Salt Magic. It's the best. Look, there's reviews, Gary. The best comic reading experience I've had in a long time by Ben Hackett.
Really nice thing that Ben said. Thank you, Ben. I know. I just asked him nicely.
Or how long did you keep him in a blindfold for him to say that? It
must have been a while. He's a really sweet guy. So it was just really nice. And then Kathy, again, great friend.
Salt Magic.
An inspirational comic book artist. So honored to have their words.
Yeah, Salt Magic is an epic coming-of-age adventure. You've never read a Western like this before.
And Kathy was the one who talked to me about picking a style per project. That's their,
I love that.
Their words.
Well, it's kind of, it kind of crosses. That was always very much encouraged by my mentor, but I also think there's a very much animated approach where you're developing Pixar movies. While they look like a Pixar film, they don't all look alike. They really do design these worlds every time. And I think
it's thematically, if it's a swoopy story, if it's a scary story, you have to have a scary or swoopy style.
Yeah, for sure.
Just to inform the story itself.
Yeah, I think that's so true. So I think that's, I don't know how that works. I don't know the function that works so well, in monthly comic books. I mean, I think it's only when you get a chance to sort of hop on a book for a period of time, if you can get a month to kind of say, okay, what am I thinking about? How do I want to approach this?
It's hyper control. These graphic novels allow you to just, from the very beginning to the end, control the entire visuals.
No, it's a great, listen, it's a massive undertaking, but it is an amazing luxury in the sense of being a visual, storyteller. Mm-hmm. I think that's a super strong thing. I'm super excited that you're writing your own stuff. Not that Hope isn't a great writer and other people aren't great writers.
I've learned a lot from Hope. I'm going to try to do my best. I do like the story that I wrote. The treatment. I think it's good. I think people will like it.
Oh, that's fantastic. I can't encourage comic book artists enough to write their own thing, because I think there's I think if you can tell a story visually, you can write it down first and then tell it visually even better.
Yes. There's a learning curve. You have to work at it, but I think there's a path there. I have learned a lot from drawing the comics about what I personally feel about story beats and narratives and things I want to say visually that I don't need words for. I've learned a lot from that.
And there's a plethora of examples. You can get you could download 1,000 scripts in an afternoon and spend a year reading
Yes.
them to get all the, the sort of the visual acumen that you need to go, okay, well, that's how somebody did that on a written pass, now. How does that line up against the actual comic book? Oh, okay. Well,
Exactly. You have to go and look at it in context.
yeah, and I think there's a great learning curve that you can get from that. So I'm super excited. I can't wait to see when you announce that book, because I think that's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, me too. Sometime soon. I think we're doing Salt Magic stuff first, and then
I know you have this small little book that you have to promote in the next couple of months.
I don't want to pull focus from my baby.
No. It's beautiful. Everything I have seen and read within this is wonderful. I think you guys did an amazing job, and I really think this is I don't know. I think this one's going to blow up. It's my hope.
I mean, if it comes out and people read it, I am going to be over the moon.
Yeah.
Wait for kids. I want kids to read this book that I made for them.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. That's the hope, man. There's nothing better than seeing a kid who loved what you did.
Yeah. That's the best.
It's the best absolute feeling.
They're the best reviewers. They have the best opinions.
Yeah. For sure.
They don't lie.
No, they're bad at it. They're typically bad at it.
That's why it's so good.
I don't think they know how to lie, most of them.
All right, well, Rebecca, I'm going to start playing the music and do the outros. Anything else you wanted to add before we say goodbye?
Oh no, this was a wonderful talk. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, absolutely. See, it wasn't scary. It wasn't scary.
I know. I was really relieved.
Just my drawing.
Yeah.
Exactly. The drawing gave me a lot of
scary,
safe feelings.
My drawing was scary.
Right on. Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us. And best of luck with Salt Magic and everything else you have coming up. And until next week, everybody, like, click, subscribe, or whatever that is. Whatever Phil says, do what he says. Bye.
Okay.